Hello, everyone. This is Norman Garrett with Planview. Today, we're going to be talking about taming the Agile chaos with Agile Program Management using Planview. And what this really means is that we want to drill into the idea and the concept of a release train and how do we track the work inside of a release train that potentially has teams that are using multiple team level tools. So maybe they're using Kanban or Lean Kit at the team level. Maybe they're using ADO. Maybe they're using Jira. And maybe they're using all three. We're going to look at an example of that today in a live demo of this to show how we can do things like PI planning. We can bring those teams together and really visually manage the work of those multiple teams across the release train, regardless of methodology. We're going to talk about how we can see dependencies and sequence those features and stories. We're going to talk about gaining visibility, insight, and really understanding the process and progress across the work, across all those teams. And then finally, we'll talk sort of in the retro area, things like reports, metrics, velocity, how do we track and do all that and ultimately deliver better for the next PI. All right, so we're going to start here with the essential safe sort of roadmap and setup here. Really what we're going to be doing, again, is focusing on the idea of a release train. So if you have this team of teams concept that's set up as a release train, how are you going to first get features into that release train? How are you going to plan those features in the concept of PI planning? How are you going to break those features down into stories? Then how are you going to execute against those features? So we're going to look at all of that sort of as the core of the demo today. Now, there's also sort of other tertiary things that we want to talk about too. Things like built-in quality, metrics, managing a backlog appropriately, viewing cross-team dependencies, all that good stuff we'll also touch on as well. So you think about that safe diagram. Now let's go directly to Planview's sort of construct of that diagram. And this is where we're going to see, again, sort of the middle layer of Agile Program Management serving as our team of teams or release train tracking and managing. On these release trains, we're going to have folks like the RTEs, product managers, line of business, stakeholders. All those sort of roles are going to be executing and delivering things like PI and art planning, team of teams coordination, road mapping, all that good stuff at this Agile Program Management level. Down at the team level, we've got our sort of non-dev business teams. So things like maybe operations, business operations, product management, sales, marketing, all that good stuff. We've got our continuous delivery Kanban teams operating within Lean Kit. So things like DevOps teams, ops teams, that sort of thing. And maybe we've got our dev teams that are still using their ALM tools. So not here to discount the power of a Jira or an ADO, especially when you get into the CI/CD pipeline and how deep those tools can get with their plugins. So what we're going to talk about is how we actually bring these tools into the fold of the Planview solution and ultimately get to a place where we are doing release train Agile Program Management using those teams' execution data of features and stories. All right. So with that quick intro, let's jump into a live demo and walk through a scenario here. So what I want to do is start by opening up our program Kanban board inside of Planview Lean Kit. Now, Lean Kit's going to be a Kanban-based tool, so everything is board-based. And in this particular board, we'll be looking at that release train, single release train that's been broken into three teams, Team Charlie, Team Beta, and Team Alpha. More on them later. Before we get into the details of this board, I do want to sort of walk the board and talk about what we're doing here. So if I open our legend, you can see that we're on a program board because we're looking at things like collaborative work, enablers, features, infrastructure enablers, releases, risks, that sort of card type or type of work on this particular board. If we were on a portfolio Kanban, we'd see things like epics. Similarly, if we were on a team level board, we'd see things like user stories, but program board, we're predominantly going to be focused on blue cards as features. Now, from a lane perspective, we've got sort of our standard Kanban flow. Work comes in the left, starts to move through its process from the backlog to our started lanes, implementing, validation, deploying, releasing, then ultimately gets to a sort of done and delivered state. Now, because we are looking at a release train board, this time box has been organized into PIs. So we have our backlog and PI planning aspect of things right here. So upcoming PI backlog, as well as our current PI delivery set up right here. So as this work gets burned down and completed, we will then fill it up with the backlog from the upcoming PI. If that makes sense. All right, so let's start here and talk about backlog and how do we get features into Lean Kit and how do we start to plan and prioritize these in the backlog. So there's a lot of ways to get cards into Lean Kit. If you're using our lean portfolio management platform. We can use the Enterprise One integration to actually bring in work that way. You can email features to a board. We can have folks that'll do maybe set up a separate intake triage board that actually opens up suggestions across the company and triages them into more of a refined feature backlog that can be sent to this board directly. You can, as we're going to do today, just quick create some cards in the backlog. Maybe you have a feature that's too big. You want to split it really easily. We can quickly duplicate or split those features. So a lot of options for getting the cards on the board. But once they're on here in the backlog, now we want to actually start to add attributes about them and track and manage and break them down appropriately. So you can see here in our sort of ready program backlog, we do have our auto sort set to card priority. This could be something else if you wanted it to be. And we're starting to add in things like WSGIF scores. We're adding in rough story point sizing, tags, priority. So all these sorts of attributes about these cards are starting to be added into the features and the enablers inside of our program backlog, ready for the PI planning event. Okay. And what we're going to do here to kind of push play on the scenario is actually quick create 3 features for Team Alpha, Team Beta, and Team Charlie. So we'll call this Team Alpha feature. And I'll do another quick create Team Beta feature, Team Charlie feature. Okay. So quick sort of creation of 3 features, Alpha, Beta, and Charlie. And now let's say we want to actually take these and bring them into the PI planning event and get these features delivered. Okay. So we have our PI planning lane. This is what our go-to market uses internally to Planview. A lot of our customers are using this now with COVID. Things need to be remote. So you can use these Linkit boards and they perform excellently for those sort of remote PI planning events, slotting in features to iterations and then ultimately breaking them down. So let's walk through that process now. So Team Charlie, let's slot them into iteration 3. Now, if you'll see here, we do actually have built-in WIP limits for Team Charlie and actually Beta and Alpha as well. But you can actually build in your previous team's velocity or your capacity into the PI planning event so that you're not going to exceed your WIP. Now, you can set up WIP limits on any sort of lane here in LaneKit, but this is a great way to sort of track and manage that velocity across PI over PI. And again, making sure you're not overloading those teams. So Team Charlie is going to be an operations team that's using Planview LeanKit. So we'll show you here in a second how to break this down into stories. Now, earlier we talked about teams that are using those other ALM tools, maybe Jira, maybe ADO. In this case, what we have is Team Beta is actually a development team that's using Jira, and Team Alpha is a development team that's using ADO. Now, what we've done with our Planview integration functionality is actually set up direct integrations into these teams' boards so that they will see and immediately get feedback for features that were planned during the PI planning event onto their boards. So we're going to quickly see, okay, Team Beta now has a Jira key as its header. That means it's been integrated into that Jira Teams project. The team can break down stories against that Epic and Jira. The Epic feature relationships can be synonymous here. And then all that progress and all that work breakdown is going to be shown back here inside of LeanKit. Exact same setup for Team Alpha. So here we're saying really quickly and easily 3 teams operating in 3 different tools at the team level doing PI planning in one single pane of glass. Now, where we get to be really important and really beneficial for these release train engineers and the folks using this board are we're going to show our cross-team dependencies. So if we say, hey, Team Beta has a feature that has a dependency on something that Team Charlie is working on, let's create that connection with one click. And now we're going to see that red line diagram, that red string diagram, showing Team Charlie's feature having a dependency against Team Beta's. All right, so you're getting immediate visibility into those cross-team dependencies right here during the PI planning event. We also have the ability to create vertical dependencies. So do features tie into a specific release? Do epics tie into features? Do stories tie into features? All that good stuff and all that sort of standard breakdown you would expect in an Agile delivery tool is available to use right here within LeanKit. Okay, so now what I want to do is actually push play on this and start the PI event, right? So we're actually going to advance the time box a little bit, and I'm going to open up my implementing current program increment lane. Now here we're going to see the same 3 teams, Team Charlie, Team Beta, and Team Alpha, but this is going to be the active current PI that they are taking this PI backlog and actually dragging cards from lane to lane and burning them down against the given time box of the current PI. Okay. We're still retaining all those things like the release relationships, epic relationships, cross-team dependency relationships. Those are all set up and managed right here. We're also tracking some of the ceremonial things. So overall PI objectives, team-specific objectives. If you have those high-level time boxes, you want to track things like risk and go through your Rome assessment for each of those risks, tie them directly to cards. These are all things that have been built into this Kanban board at the release train level to give you that awesome visibility into what's actually happening with the cross-team delivery and execution. Okay, so let's actually start to bring this into life. So Team Charlie, what I'm going to do is actually bring this into Team Charlie's backlog, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to sort of create story cards against this particular feature. So I'm going to connect to new cards. I'm going to put these on my team's board. We'll call this, Charlie Story 1, and we'll go ahead and add another one too. And we'll put that on the team's board as well. Okay, so now we've created two cards that are on the team board in LeanKit that are going to be executed against this given feature that's in flight. And so these guys are using, maybe this is that business ops team or marketing team that's using LeanKit at the team level, getting all those awesome Kanban benefits and delivering against those features. You're going to see as they progress that 0-3 is going to advance. Now, let's go back to our integrated teams and talk about them, right? So how's Team Beta? How are we actually going to show them delivering work in flight and actually executing against work that's in a current program increment? Well, let's open up this team card, and I'm going to see that I've got because of the integration, I've got a link directly to Jira from the integration itself. I can click this open, and now let's assume I'm sort of putting on the Scrum Master hat here. I've got my epic, and the team's going to go in and start to break this down. But we're still going to do this all in Jira. So we'll call this, story 1, story 2, story 3. This is an easy feature. Only 3 stories we need to complete it. And maybe we want to go ahead and add some story points to story 1. And we'll go ahead and bring story 1 into a done state. Let's say we just knock that out really quickly. Now at the epic in Jira level, I'm going to go ahead and bring this in progress, right? The epic is now in flight. It's in progress for our release train. We want to denote that and show that inside of our Jira board. This is all well and good. We can add our comments and all that good stuff if we need to. Back in LeanKit, you're going to see that card actually just jumped into an in-process lane. So I now know, without having to do anything at the program board, this is all through the integration, that Team Beta is now, they're actively working on this feature that I set up. Epic to feature, again, is synonymous when you're kind of crossing tools like this. We can go to our child cards tab and we can see all of the stories that are in flight and set up for this given feature, right? So you're actually going to get in real-time progress, real-time status updates of all those fields that we're setting up for these cards. Those story points came across. We can bring over things like comments, attachments, descriptions, any field you want, you can bring and input into the LeanKit environment you've got set up here. We're going to do this exact same thing for ADO. So if we go over here to the Team Alpha feature, I can open this up. I'm going to be brought into ADO. We'll see here real quick. I can go through the same process of opening up this piece of work and then watching it being broken down at the team level. I'm not going to go through that here just for the sake of time, but let's just say that we already broke this down and Team Alpha feature is now a done state. This is something that we'll have set up back here in LeanKit. So you see, again, that card just jumped and we're now complete for that Team Alpha feature. So it's a really quick example, but gives you insight into how awesome and how simple it is to integrate all this work and aggregate all this cross-team work in a clear, concise Kanban board at the program level here. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about metrics. So I want to quickly hit on some of the metrics. If we open up any of these cards, we can see that we have the ability to look at all sorts of things like how long did it spend in any current lane, what lane is rework, how long has it spent in a blocked lane, why is it blocked, what's our on-time completion percentage estimate, right? So are we actually going to finish this thing on time based on other cards, other objective data on the board? We've got our board health. If we want to open up and quickly see, okay, do we have severe roadblocks on the board or bottlenecks? How many cards are we bringing in? What's our throughput? What's our width? All that good stuff is available right here on the board level. And this could be on a single release train board. It could be on a multiple release train board. You could run these on the team boards. All these reports are going to work great. And then we can get into actually the granular reports, the things like, okay, show me that PI burn down. Show me my cumulative flow diagram. What about my cycle time? All that information is going to be shown right here with a couple of clicks right off of the board. And then finally, we'll show we have the ability to do custom dashboards. So if you have custom burn ups that you want, for example, like we're going to see here, I want to see a burn up across my entire PI, or excuse me, a burn up for my release train across the entire PI. Give me that sort of insight and show me that data. All right. So here we're going to see for each sprint or iteration, how many cards were completed, how many story points are we cumulatively completing? Do we have scope change for a given iteration? What was the feature that was completed? What are all the stories that were broken down against it? So all this data you've got now inside of Planview Linkit is something you could use to consume and build out custom dashboards based off that execution data. So any sort of dashboard that you can think of, you can build out using that data. And I'll lastly kind of call out, because again, we've got integrated cards into these environments, be it Jira, be it ADO, Rally version 1. Because we now have card movement across boards, we have lanes shifting. Those are going to trigger all the in-app metrics that you've got here in Linkit. So you now have normalized burn downs and burn ups and cumulative flow diagrams and cycle time reports across all of your teams that are using Linkit, Jira, and ADO in this example. So something that's historically almost impossible to get is something you can now get today with Planview Linkit and using our Agile Program Kanban functionality. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. Thanks everyone for your time.